Hello and welcome to News Round, a recap of stories that made headlines during the week. Coming up, 4 years after he was deposed, Mahamadou Sanusi II is reinstated as the Emir of Kano, as Governor Abba Yusuf presents him with the new letter of appointment. And ministers present performance reports to Nigerians to commemorate first anniversary of President Bola Tinubu's administration in office. And CBN raises interest rates to 26.25% amid soaring inflation levels. Plus, Iran mourns death of President Ibrahim Raisi and Foreign Minister Emir Abdullahian, who died in a helicopter crash. And we kick off News Round in the ancient city of Kano, where some historic events unfolded, with Governor Abba Yusuf reinstating Mahamadou Sanusi as the Emir of Kano. The governor made the announcement after signing into law the bill dissolving the 4 new emirate councils in the state created by former governor Abdullahi Ganduje and given the 4 emirs 48 hours to vacate their palaces. A day after announcing the reinstatement of Mahamadou Sanusi II as the Emir of Kano, Governor Abba Yusuf has presented the letter of appointment to the emir despite a court order stopping the action. The governor says the court order will not stop him from following through with the appointment because a due process has been followed.
Exactly 10 years ago, former Governor Rabiu Kwankwaso presented a letter of appointment to Mahamadou Sanusi II here at the Africa House in the Kano State Government House.
Sanusi II to receive the reinstatement letter, reappointment letter, restoration letter.
History is repeating itself as Governor Abba Yusuf is presenting the letter of appointment to him after being dethroned by the previous administration.
May I urge you, Your Highness, to be guided in all your conduct by the principles and tenets of Islamic teachings, as you are very well known in that effect. And I call upon you to use your position to unite all the adherents of the house of Malam Ibrahim Dabo, and also bring harmony and understanding among all the Islamic sects within the Emirate and within the entire 44 local government areas of the state.
It is now time for the traditional title holders to pay allegiance to the new emir of the ancient Kano Emirate. Alhaji Muhammadu Sanusi II believes history is made once again as he is reinstated as the Emir of Kano.
I recall when I was given an appointment letter here during the Kwankwaso administration, and today I'm once again receiving it. Who can do this if not our Creator? He gives leadership to whom He wants and when He wishes, and takes it away when He wishes.
In response to the court order stopping the reinstatement, Governor Abba Yusuf believes it was illegally issued by the court.
How can someone who is present in the US give us an order? It's necessary for us to stand against this kind of thing. I will table this at the Governors Forum meeting. This must come to an end.
The Emir led the governor, other traditional leaders and Muslim faithful in the Jumat prayer at the Government House Mosque. Meanwhile, for now, there is relative calm at the palace of the Emir as residents anticipate the resumption of office by Alhaji Muhammadu Sanusi II. Sadiq Ilyasu, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, in the nation's capital, ministers presented their scorecards ahead of the one-year anniversary of President Bola Tinubu's administration. During his presentation, the Minister of Power, Mr. Adebayo Adelabu, said that electricity generation reached over 5,000 megawatts in May 2024, marking a significant improvement over previous levels. The Ministers of Health, Housing and Urban Development, among others, also made their presentations.
The second day of the ministerial sectoral briefing to mark the first year in office of President Bola Tinubu featured 5 ministries.
For Mohammed Idris,
The Minister of Information and National Orientation is midwifing this process.
this is a continuation of the sectoral briefings that we are getting from the various ministries. I want to say that it is again going to be a bumper edition like you have had yesterday.
The Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Ali Pate, is the first to begin the day's presentation. He highlights the investments made in the nation's health sector, especially for primary health care service.
Over the last 9 months, in 33 federal tertiary hospitals, 4.5 million Nigerians were able to access outpatient services, and 1.6 million Nigerians had inpatient admissions in those 33 facilities. So if you extrapolate for the 72 facilities, we can logically expect about 7 to 8 million Nigerians who are ill, who sought services from federal facilities, and about 2.5 million Nigerians who have gotten inpatient admission in our facilities. We've disbursed through the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, the first tranche of 25 billion through MPC and NHIA, reaches 8,300 facilities. But we put a condition that states that will access those have to comply with the fiduciary guidelines that have been provided.
Next is the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Mr. Hamid Dangiwa, who gives insight on the efforts to make housing affordable for all Nigerians.
We have planned and commenced the actualization of the Renewed Hope Cities and Estates Development Program, which we quite well know that Mr. President launched early this year. He launched the Renewed Hope Estate and Cities Program, and he did a groundbreaking on the same day of 3,112 housing units for a start. So under phase 1, we plan to deliver a total of 20,000 housing units across the Nigeria, with both budgetary allocation of the 20,000 housing units and 30,000 additional under the PPP, public-private partnerships. So under this concept, housing unit built in renewed hope cities will be sought at commercial rates, while a substantial percentage will be sought at concessionary rates to low and medium income Nigerians who are members of the Nigerian Labour Congress, the Trade Union Congress.
The Minister of Power, Mr. Adebayo Adelabu, rounds up the day's presentations by highlighting the efforts to improve electricity supply in the country, which has increased the nation's power generation.
5,000 megawatts of power was achieved in May 2024. For the first time in 3 years, exactly 3rd of May 2024, we generated, transmitted, and distributed 5,003.45 megawatts of power, where we have been generating below 4,000. We all know what we passed through in February and March, but we rose to the occasion and we made sure we changed the situation for the better. Our target is to achieve 6,000 megawatts before the end of this year for the first time in the history of Nigeria, and to happen, inshallah.
The ministerial scorecard presentation will take a weekend break and return on Monday as more ministers are expected to mount the podium to present their achievements in the first year of the administration of President Bola Tinubu. Benny Ark, Channels Television News.
And the question of how best to resolve the farmer-herder crisis in the country resurfaced in the upper legislative chamber, with the senators holding polarized views on the issue. While some clamored outrightly for a law banning open grazing, others sought ways to resuscitate the long-abandoned grazing routes. At the end of the debates, the Senate resolved to convene a national summit to discuss the way out of the challenge.
It's the first plenary for the week, and lawmakers had barely settled for the business of the day when a motion raised by Senator Issa Jibrin on a recent clash between farmers and herders drew a polarized debate in the upper chamber.
Aware that Omala local government has been under recurring attacks by gunmen, further alarmed that the attacks on these communities in Omala local government area have resulted in the killing of over 500 citizens, in addition to wanton destruction of public and private properties worth hundreds of millions of naira.
That open grazing prohibiting law must be enacted by this Senate so that those who engage in animal husbandry will be compelled to go by way of ranching. The livestock industry is worth 30 trillion naira. We have to be very decisive, funding our security agencies to protect our people.
Just as some lawmakers canvassed for more advanced ways to end the conflict, others appear resolute that status quo remain.
All the grazing routes that we had before has been taken over as a result of development, urbanization and whatever. It has been encroached upon. So if new grazing routes were created, it will go a long way to serve as a panacea to the problem of farmers' herders clashes.
What Senator Mongoro is proposing is that we should set up new grazing routes. With urbanization, where are you going to pass? Are you going to pass in universities, private mansions? Or are you, so, and how do you educate the farmers from outside West Africa?
The contribution by the Senate President is, however, not the last say on the matter.
We want to propose as additional prayer that the Senate resolved to set up an ad hoc committee that will work towards a national summit involving all the stakeholders such that we can together find a lasting solution.
A few moments later, the Senate dissolves into a closed-door session to further discuss the matter.
As a result of the work that the committee is going to do, we are giving the committee 4 weeks to revert to the Senate.
By the same token, another motion on the urgent need to halt the incessant spate of killings and boundary disputes in part of the Dupani local government area of Cross River State is sponsored by Senator Asuko Ekpayo. The Senate subsequently asked the National Boundary Commission to resolve the Dupani dispute within 6 months. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Thank you for staying with us. Now to some economic matters. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria has again increased the country's interest rate, this time by 150 basis points. The 12-member panel decided to continue its pursuit of inflation targeting stance with the aim of reducing inflation to 21% by the end of the year. With the latest hike, the committee has delivered 750 basis points on interest rates so far this year.
Monetary Policy Committee, MPC, of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, held its 295th meeting on the 20th and 21st of May, 2024.
For the third time this year, CBN Governor Olayemi Kadoso announces the decision of the Monetary Policy Committee to hike interest rate in its bid to stabilize prices and moderate inflation.
The committee's decisions are as follows. 1. Raise the MPR by 150 basis points to 26.25% from 24.75%. 2. Retain the asymmetric corridor around the MPR to plus 100 to minus 300 basis points. 3. Retain the cash reserve ratio of deposit money banks at 45%. And 4. Retain the liquidity ratio at 30%.
The hike was expected since Mr. Cardoso had already indicated that it's a hawkish stance, even though inflationary pressure seemed to be tapering. The fear is, however, the impact on the real sector, as the cost of funding to MSMEs, which contribute about 50% to the GDP, has increased even further.
The effect of this, which for me is dampening, will likely bring a contraction in GDP growth rate. And that means what we had as our outlook, first and foremost at the beginning of the year, and then at the beginning of the second quarter, that was in April, is going to have to be moderated looking forward. We may therefore see GDP growth rates not up to what we had projected. In our firm, we're looking at 3.74 for the year, but we are looking now at a shaving of maybe about 30, 40 basis points from that. In which case, we could be looking at something just a little above 3%. And if we now sustain this into the second half of the year, then we likely not see growth anywhere close to 3%.
On the other hand, there are some gains expected from this.
Hiking this rate at this level will attract investors naturally, I believe so. So that will naturally give us some elbow room when it comes to our reserves. But the question now becomes, how much of that is the central bank willing to put at the disposal to help defend the naira? Because in the end, every country defends their currency. Whether you want to say it, whether you're using a reserve balance or you're not.
Finding a balance between boosting economic growth and taming inflation continues. And economists say it's easier to achieve if intentional steps to increase food supply, among other factors, are implemented.
And Justice Binta Nyako of the Federal High Court has dismissed a request by the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, to restore his revoked bail and transfer him from the Department of State Service custody to the house arrest or prison. Mr. Kanu says his trial is a breach of Nigeria's constitution.
The detained leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Mr. Nnamdi Kanu, is received by friends and family members as he arrives to court for the ruling on his application to be transferred from the custody of the Department of State Services to Kuje Prison, as well as his fresh bail application. However, the trial judge, Justice Binta Nyako, dismissed his application, stating that Mr. Kanu had earlier jumped the bail granted him and escaped out of the country. Justice Nyako added that the sureties who stood for him in the earlier bail had applied to be discharged and had been discharged on the ground that they could not locate Kanu and did not know his whereabouts. The judge also disagreed with Mr. Kanu's lead counsel that the Supreme Court held that the earlier bail granted him ought not to have been revoked, adding that she had perused the Supreme Court's judgment and did not see the claim of the lawyer. Shortly after the ruling, a visibly angry Nnamdi Kanu berated counsel to the federal government, Mr. Adeboyega Awomolo, for allegedly perpetrating an act of illegality in the bid to prosecute him, insisting that no court in Nigeria can try him.
Section 2, subsection 3F of Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act. That's what it says. Any court considered to try me is committing an act of terrorism. Yes. Very clear. You cannot violate a treaty that Nigeria entered into and then come to try that very person is not done anywhere in the world. So you must be aware of that. So that is why there is all these ridiculous delays. That is what Supreme Court said. I did not jump bail. My home was invaded. They came to kill me and I survived. They came to Kenya to kidnap me, brought me back to this country and seeking to try me, which the law says cannot happen.
His counsel speaks after the day's proceedings.
What led to all these problems is the refusal of the court to obey or implement, for want of a better word, to implement the ruling of the Supreme Court that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu never jumped bail, that he was driven into exile by the actions of the prosecution, and therefore the ruling by the court that he jumped bail shouldn't have been made. So in Ordinarily, we expected that this court would have just followed suit by restoring his bail, but it didn't happen. So now the court that's not what the Supreme Court said. So we're going to look at that. We're going to go home as a legal team and ruminate over this and come out with a legal response to this anomaly.
The case has been adjourned to June 19th for trial. Emanuela Ekele, Channels Television News.
And finally, a news round. It was a dark Monday for many of the people of Iran as the death of the country's president, Ibrahim Raisi, filtered across the airwaves. Mr. Raisi was confirmed dead in a helicopter crash in the northwestern region of the country, along with Foreign Minister Hossein Emir Abdullahian and other officials. Iran's Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei, declared 5 days of national mourning to honor the deceased. Before news of President Raisi's demise, he had called for prayers for those missing. Thousands of Iranians attended the funeral procession for President Raisi. Across the country, mourners waved Iranian flags and held portraits of late the president. A procession set out from Central Square in Tabriz, where Raisi was headed when his helicopter crashed.
Iran has announced 5 days of mourning after a deadly helicopter crash led to the death of President Ibrahim Raisi. Foreign Minister Hossein Emir Abdullahian and several others were also confirmed dead in the crash that occurred in the country's remote northwest region. Rescue team and the media can be seen at the scene of the crash, with bodies being evacuated from the site. The helicopter came down in the mountains in northern Iran during heavy fog on Sunday, with the site discovered by rescue teams in the early hours of Monday. President Raisi was returning from the inauguration of a dam on the border with Azerbaijan. The loss of Mr. Raisi, a conservative hardliner and protege of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is expected to sow further uncertainty in a country already buckling under significant economic and political strain. The death also comes at an especially fraught moment in the Middle East, with Israel's war against Hamas and the subsequent humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Meanwhile, all cultural and art activities in the country have been suspended for 7 days as many process the tragedy. The Iranian president died at the age of 63.
And those are the top stories for the week. Thank you for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. Bye-bye.